You want the truth. All right, then buckle up, because here it comes, whether you're ready for it or not. We live in a world where silence is bought, where truth is buried beneath 1,000 headlines, and where nations parade their military might like a child waving around a toy sword, oblivious to the fire it's about to awaken. And right now, one nation stands in the eye of that storm, you Israel, once feared, once revered, now teetering on the edge of a crisis not just of politics, but of identity. Let me tell you something no politician dares to say aloud. Pride has a price sieg. And Israel, for all its technological prowess and international lobbying, is now being handed the bill. The air of superiority that's been cultivated for decades, the belief that one nation can act with impunity, without consequence, without humility, is beginning to unravel. And what we're witnessing now, whether you choose to admit it or not, is the painful reality of that unraveling. It's easy, isn't it, to wrap every act of aggression in the cloak of self-defense, to call every retaliatory strike an act of survival. But how long can you keep swinging before the world notices that you're not just defending yourself anymore, you're playing the part of an aggressor who's forgotten how to look in the mirror? The truth is, Israel has become addicted to control, addicted to dominance, addicted to being right even when it's wrong. And let's be clear, this isn't just about politics. This is about character, morality, and you, the soul of a nation. Pride convinces you that you're untouchable, that the rules don't apply to you, that every criticism is an attack, that every consequence is unjust. But reality has a brutal way of correcting such delusions. And that correction doesn't come with a whisper. It comes with a collapse. For years, Israel was treated like a beacon in the Middle East, a miracle in the desert. But power has a way of corrupting even the purest of beginnings. The constant need to dominate, to prove superiority, to flatten dissent with brute force. It's not strength, it's fear masquerading as courage. And when fear drives policy, destruction follows. What Israel fails to grasp is that the world is not the same as it was 20 years ago. The cameras are always rolling, the people are always watching, and the conscience of humanity is waking up. You can no longer bomb your way into legitimacy or silence criticism with propaganda. The more you puff up your chest, the more obvious your insecurity becomes. And here's the bitter true thing. Empires don't fall because they're attacked. They fall because they become too arrogant to notice they're bleeding from within. They start believing their own lies. They drown in their own echo chambers. They surround themselves with sycophants and call it support. And by the time the walls begin to crack, it's already too late to reinforce them. So let this be a lesson not just for Israel, but for every power-drunk nation watching from the sidelines. The world is shifting, eyes are opening, and no amount of missiles, no number of speeches at the UN, no photo ops with world leaders can protect you from the consequences of unchecked arrogance. You want to survive? Then stop pretending you're above accountability, because if history has taught us anything, it's this: the fall always begins with pride. And right now, Israel is standing on a fault line. Defy economies, defined by its own bravado, while the world holds its breath. You want to understand the real threat in this global chess game? Then stop looking at who's shooting the loudest and start paying attention to who's been sitting in silence, watching, waiting, calculating. Iran is not some reckless, impulsive player in the Middle East. Iran is the embodiment of patience. And patience, when fueled by purpose and pain, becomes one of the most dangerous weapons in the world. See, the Western narrative loves painting Iran as the villain, angry, irrational, desperate. But that's because the West has never taken the time to understand the psychology of endurance. Now, Iran isn't rushing to the battlefield screaming into the wind. It's building step by step, year after year, while its enemies get drunk on overconfidence. While others wasted energy swinging wildly, Iran's been conserving its power, preparing for a moment that would shift the board entirely. This is the part people don't like to talk about, especially in power circles. Iran doesn't fight with emotion. It fights with legacy. It doesn't throw punches to be seen. It absorbs damage, learns from every wound, and sharpens its blade in the dark. And that blade, my friends, is getting closer to the throat of those who underestimated them. What separates Iran from its adversaries is simpleg doesn't need the world's approval. It doesn't chase validation from superpowers. While Israel flexes for the camera and parades its Western allies like trophies, Iran invests in conviction, ideology, and resilience. You may not agree with their politics, their religion, or their regime, but you cannot deny their resolve. Let me ask you, what's more terrifying? A nation that screams with every shot it fires, or a nation that sits quietly taking notes every time it's attacked? Iran's power lies in its silence, in its refusal to react emotionally, in its absolute focus on timing. Because when the world is distracted, scrolling headlines, switching sides. Iran is aligning its moves like a grandmaster in a game where most of the opponents don't even realize they're pieces. And here's what sends shivers down every arrogant diplomat's spine. Iran doesn't need to win every battle to win the war. It understands the art of psychological attrition. It uses every strike against it as fuel, every martyr as propaganda, every injustice as a rallying cry. And slowly, methodically, it turns the tides of public opinion in its favor. Not overnight, but inevitably. Now, ask yourself, what happens when the world's most underestimated, finite nationally decides the time has come to act? What happens when a country that's been insulted, sanctioned, cornered, and demonized finally unleashes the storm it's been brewing for decades? Israel, for all its might, isn't ready for that kind of confrontation because it's been fighting wars the old way with visible enemies and loud declarations. But Iran fights in shadows, in minds, in movements. Its power isn't just in weapons, it's in EOE world. And that will, when unleashed, doesn't just target borders, it targets due belief systems, Zolby. It makes you question what you're defending, and worse, whether you deserve to win. So when you hear the pundits and generals downplaying Iran, brushing them off as irrational extremists, remember this: it's not the ones who roar that and empires, it's the ones who wait, who bleed in silence, who rise slowly. And when they do, they don't just shake the ground, they change the map. You might not see Iran coming. That's exactly how they want it. There was a time, not long ago, when you couldn't question Israel's actions without being branded a heretic in the global discourse, when criticism was career suicide, when the truth, no matter how unbleeding, was quietly swept beneath the rug of diplomacy. But that time is over. That veil has lifted. The world is watching now, wide-eyed, unfiltered, and furious. And Israel's unshakable image is starting to crumble under the weight of its own unchecked conduct. You see, truth doesn't stay buried forever. You can silence a journalist, spin a narrative, or flood the media with talking points. But in the end, truth leaks out through videos on smartphones, through testimonies on the ground, through the eyes of children who should never have seen what they've seen. And slowly, relentlessly, the global tide is shifting. Not because Iran won a military engagement, but because Israel is losing the moral one. Yeah, let me say something. Many want TG. Israel is no longer the underdog. It hasn't been for years. It is a nuclear armed state with some of the most advanced surveillance and military technology on Earth, backed by global superpowers. But somewhere along the way, it began wielding that power not just to protect itself, but to dominate, to expand, to silence. And here's what Israel failed to anticipate. The internet doesn't lie quietly. You can't carpet bomb perception like you carpet bomb a city. The videos are out there, uncut, raw, merciless. Buildings reduced to dust. Civilians crushed beneath politics. Mothers wailing over their children while the world scrolls past with a growing sense of horror. These aren't isolated incidents anymore. This is eager paterno, and the world has begun to see it. The same nations that once stood firmly behind Israel offering unconditional support are beginning to hesitate, because even power has its price, and the cost of blind allegiance is becoming too high. Universities erupt in protests. Parliaments debate arms deals. Influencers and activists, people with massive audiences, speak out, risking everything. And they do it because the evidence is undeniable, because silence has become complicity. This is what Israel's leadership doesn't understand, or perhaps refuses to admitting. You don't win hearts and minds with missiles. You don't secure your legacy by flattening homes. You don't keep the world on your side by pretending every child you kill was a necessary casualty in some twisted arithmetic of defense. And Iran, the biggest leak, they're watching this unfold with cold clarity. They don't need to convince the world they're saints. They only need the world to start seeing that maybe, just maybe, the so-called democracy in the desert isn't as democratic, as innocent as it claims to be. Here's the irony of it all. Abu Israel, once the symbol of resilience, is now becoming a symbol of repression. And when symbols change, revolutions follow. It's not Iran that's painting Israel as the aggressor. It's Israel's own actions. The censorship, the blockades, the disproportionate responses, those speak louder than any speech at the UN ever could. And the younger generation, they're not fooled. They don't care about old alliances, old war stories, or the recycled rhetoric of post-WWE guilt. They care about justice, about truth, about humanity. And when that generation turns against you, not with bullets, but with belief, you've already started to lose. So here we are, at the turning of the tide. Israel can no longer hide behind history. The present is screaming too loudly. And if the leadership doesn't wake up to this brutal reality, then no iron dome will be high enough, no wall thick to shield them from the one weapon they never expected, to facing a global accountability. Power in its purest form is not about how many bombs you can drop or how many tanks you can parade. True power is about purpose. It's about why you use that strength, not just how. And the uncomfortable truth Israel is facing right now is this: it has all the might in the world, but no clear moral compass to guide it anymore. And when power loses purpose, destruction becomes inevitable. There was a time when Israel's story inspired the world. People rising from the ashes of history's darkest chapters, building a nation from dust and determination. But over time, that purpose, the noble drive for survival, has twisted into something darker. Now, its domination masters security, expansion dressed as necessity, fear disguised as patriotism, and behind every strike and every decision, there's a gnawing question the world is starting to ask you, what is all this power for? When you watch a Goliath using overwhelming force against the people who can barely defend themselves, something changes in the global psyche. Sympathy shifts, the narrative evolves, and it doesn't matter how many times Israel insists it's just defending itself. Optics are louder than justifications. Be a bulldozer razing homes, a missile striking a refugee camp. These aren't scenes of protection. They are signs of a nation that has confused its strength for righteousness. Let's be absolutely clear. Israel is powerful, but in the absence of a higher purpose, that power is becoming a liability. It's provoking outrage, not respect. Condemnation, not admiration. And it's empowering its enemies, because every misstep Israel makes becomes fuel for those who oppose it. Every civilian casualty is another weapon in Iran's arsenal, not made of steel or uranium, but of narrative truth that no PR campaign can erase. Meanwhile, Iran is playing a longer, colder game. It's not trying to win in a single strike. It's letting Israel overplay its hand day by day until the moral ground collapses beneath its feet. And here's the painful part. Iran doesn't have to be perfect to win. It only has to look more principled than the alternative. Right now, it's doing exactly that. Israel, on the other hand, keeps flexing. Military operations, surveillance systems, threats of escalation. It's as if the leadership believes more force equals more safety. But history shows us otherwise. Rome didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because it lost its purpose. The British Empire didn't crumble because of invasion. It crumbled because it believed it was above accountability. And that's exactly where Israel is headed. It still believes its legacy is strong enough to shield it, that its power is unquestionable, that as long as it has the technology, the weapons, and the alliances, it will endure. But what Israel fails to see is that those things mean nothing without a cause that the world can believe in. Because when your story stops inspiring people, it starts to alienate them. When your power serves only your interests, it stops being respected and starts being feared. And fear over time breeds resistance. In every street, in every voice, in every uprising, resistance grows not from weakness, from purpose. And right now, Iran is wielding purpose like a sword, while Israel swings blindly in the dark. So let's not pretend this is just about politics. This is about good philosophy, we identity, you truth, their power. Without purpose will destroy not just everything you once stood for. And if Israel doesn't redefine its purpose, if it doesn't look in the mirror and ask, the biggest economies, what are we doing this? Then it won't be Iran that ends. It will be its own reflection that finally brings it down. You can silence a nation with bombs. You can flatten buildings, scatter families, and erase neighborhoods from the map. But there's one thing you can never destroy with force, E, and idea, A, and right now, the most dangerous weapon in this war isn't nuclear. It isn't military. It's ideological. It's God belief. And that's exactly where Israel is losing this fight. This isn't just a battle of territories or politics anymore. This is a new clash of conviction, a war between the delusion of dominance and the raw, unyielding power of belief. You see, when people fight for land, they negotiate. But when they fight for faith, for identity, for something deeper than borders, they don't back down. They rise. Again, and again. Biggest economies. And no matter how many times you knock them down, they come back stronger, angrier, more focused than before. That's what Israel doesn't seem to understand. You can't bomb someone into submission when their will is forged in fire. You can't kill an idea with missiles. Every child buried under rubble, every mother who loses her son, every prayer whispered under siege, those don't break people. They radicalize them. They ignite something far more dangerous than vengeance equals purpose egg. And Iran understands this perfectly. Iran knows this isn't about who has more tanks. It's about who has more resolve, more EU narrative power, more EU ideological stamina, because ideas spread like wildfire when they're born from pain. And every act of aggression from Israel, every airstrike, every raid, it doesn't just silence a voice. It echoes across generations. It hardens hearts. It fuels movements. It creates martyrs. Israel, with all its intelligence and military superiority, is blind to this truth. biggest economies, it thinks the louder it shouts, the more it will be heard. But in reality, the world is starting to hear something else. The quiet, burning cry of people who have nothing left to lose, but everything left to believe in. And belief, when sharpened by injustice, becomes an unstoppable force. The problem here isn't just political miscalculation, it's moral blindness. Israel's leadership believes force will bring order, but what it's really doing is planting the seeds of its own destruction, not because Iran will launch a war tomorrow, but because Israel is breeding a resistance that goes far beyond borders, one that lives in the hearts of the oppressed, in the minds of the marginalized, and in the streets of every nation where injustice can no longer be ignored. Every bullet fired is building the opposition's ideology. Every wall built becomes a monument to division. And every silence from the international community only adds fuel to the fire. We are watching a country, once revered, now write its own downfall. Not with weakness, the biggest economies, but with your arrogant misuse of strength, though. Iran doesn't need to win battles. It needs Israel to keep making enemies. And tragically, that's exactly what's happening. Israel is not just at war with Iran, it's at war with perception, with public opinion, with the very soul of global conscience. And you can't shoot your way out of that war. You can't drone strike belief systems into obedience. You can't silence billions of voices by silencing one. This is the point where history changes direction, where nations either wake up or collapse under the weight of their own pride. And if Israel keeps ignoring the ideological wildfire it's feeding, then it's not just losing a political war, it's inviting an existential reckoning. Not because Iran is stronger, but because Israel keeps giving it exactly what it needs to win a reason to believe. There comes a point in every conflict where the enemy outside your gates is no longer your greatest threat. No, the real danger, the one no one wants to admit, comes from within, from the doubt that festers, from the cracks in unity, from the slow, creeping erosion of belief in your own leadership. And Israel, whether it wants to admit it or not, has entered that phase. The storm isn't just coming from Iran, it's coming from Gue inside the walls of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Look around, listen closely. The signs are all there. Politicians bickering more about saving face than saving lives. Military generals making noise, but offering no clear strategy beyond more of the same. Citizens marching in protest, not against an enemy abroad, but against decisions being made at home. It's not Iran dismantling Israel's foundation. It's beauty Israel's own failure to self-correct all that's threatening to tear it apart. For years, the Israeli leadership has thrived on the idea of external threats. It's been the glue holding the nation together. We must unite because the enemy is near. But that narrative is wearing thin. People are beginning to see the cycle for what it is, a political survival tactic. And you can't keep a nation motivated through fear alone. Eventually they demand vision, hope, or clarity of purpose. And when that isn't provided, what happens? Collapse doesn't start at the borders. It starts in the soul of the society. The irony here is tragic. Israel, a nation that rose from unimaginable suffering, is now sabotaging itself, not through weakness, but through arrogant inertia, leaders obsessed with optics, policymakers too afraid to pivot, institutions more interested in maintaining legacy than facing reality, all while Iran, ever patient, ever watchful, waits for exactly this, the slow decay of Israel from within, and make no mistake, Iran doesn't need to strike if Israel is already imploding. That's the cold genius of it. Iran's strength isn't just in its missiles or militias, it's in the psychological war it's waging, one that exposes every flaw, every contradiction, every lie Israel's leadership has leaned on for decades. And as those lies unravel, so too does the unity that once made Israel formidable. What you're seeing now is more than political division. It's a spiritual fracture, a crisis of identity. Is Israel the sanctuary of democracy it claims to be? Or has it morphed into something else, something it once swore to never become? These questions aren't coming from critics abroad, they're coming from voices view inside me. Journalists, students, veterans, mothers, and they're not whispering anymore, they're shooting, and when a nation begins to doubt itself, when it starts to question not just its strategy, but its very soul, that's when empires fall, not by invasion, but by implosion. Let's not sugarcoat this. Israel is at a crossroads, not between war and peace, but between truth and delusion, and between renewal and collapse. And what makes this so hauntingly dangerous is that the leadership refuses to see it. Or worse, they see it and choose to deflect, to blame, to distract. But history is merciless. It doesn't care about excuses. It doesn't pause for pride. It punishes those who pretend they're untouchable, who cling to yesterday while tomorrow burns. And so while the world debates whether Iran will strike, they're missing the real story, the real war, the final war. You may not be Iran vs Israel at Albi. It may be Israel vs itself. And unless something changes, unless courage replaces comfort, unless leadership emerges from the rubble of ego, the end won't come with a bang, it'll come with a mirror, and the reflection will be undeniable.